The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to a special presentation of The Law and You. This is program number 952, coming to you on Monday the 14th of October 2019. On this very special program, we will be bringing to you the topic mediation. And I say we because I am not alone on this program. For the first time, The Law and You will be coming to you as a panel of 3 persons, and I go into the program without any lengthy preambles, except to say condolences to all families which have suffered recent bereavements, and congratulations to the Barbados Tridents. And that is all for preliminary remarks. I would like to begin by introducing my 2 special guests who will enlighten you this evening on the topic mediation. I turn first to our well-known Vincentian cleric, Monsignor Michael Stewart of the Roman Catholic Church. He is well known to all Vincentians, and I'm sure he will prefer me to address him in the program this evening as Father Mike. Father Mike, welcome to The Law and You.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell QC, and it is good to be here. I, from time to time, would watch your program on SVG-TV and be enlightened by it. I pray that this program would be an enlightening one for all viewers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Father Mike is here as a member of the National Mediation Committee. On that committee, there are several organizations and institutions, and he represents the religious bodies. On my left, another distinguished Vincentian, well known to many people, Mr. Simon Camara, the proprietor of Liberty Properties Limited. He is a real estate proprietor, and he is a court-appointed mediator. Mr. Camara hails from the Vermont Valley. We are happy to have him, and let me invite you to say good night to the viewing audience. Welcome you to The Law and You, sir.
Thank you very much, Queen's Counsel. It is a pleasure to be here and to participate in this program. As a High Court mediator, I am tasked with helping persons to resolve their issues from time to time, and it gives me great pleasure to be here to explain the mechanics of that this evening. Thank you.
Well, this is National Mediation Week, and to give you an idea of the events which have been slated to take place this week, I invite Father Mike to tell us what activities can be expected on this National Mediation Week. So, Father Mike.
So yesterday at the Methodist Church, there would have been a service specially dedicated to mediation. And of course, this program this evening is another of the activities for this week. Then on Wednesday, that is the 16th, we have a public lecture at French's House beginning at 7:30 p.m. This would be presented by Mr. Francis Compton, who is the Regional Mediation Coordinator. The theme or the topic of the lecture is "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity." Then on Thursday, October 17th, we have a free legal aid clinic which takes place at the Old Public Library from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Come out and meet lawyers and train mediators. You may have something that you are wrestling with and may need some help in terms of how to deal with it in a way that is reconciliatory rather than from particularly justice perspective. Come out and get some help from those who will be there. And then on Friday, we have a dramatized mock mediation session. This would take place at the House of Assembly at 2 p.m. Again, we urge you to come out and see what happens in a mediation process.
Thank you very much, Father Meg. And let me turn now to Mr. Simon Kamara. Mr. Kamara, as the only trained court-appointed mediator on this panel, can you enlighten the viewers as to what is mediation all about?
Okay, splendid. You may have a civil matter before any of the given judges sitting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the civil jurisdiction, and the judge may well feel at that particular time that it is best to resolve the issue at hand through mediation. A referral order is issued by the judge. Though you have at some point you have it being stated that it's a voluntary process, at some point the parties may decide that they don't want to continue with mediation, but it is referred by a judge, and then from the roster of mediators, the parties can choose the mediator they wish to help them settle their dispute at the date and time set by the court. After that, I am informed, the mediator will be informed by the court, and then the date and time will be set, and then the parties with their lawyers will show up to the mediation session, and at that time they will be told by the mediator, myself, the process as to how we will attempt to help the parties resolve their issues.
And what is that process like?
Very good. I will attempt to, what I like to call, demystify the court, the stiffness of the court, if you will, by reading an opening statement, which I have here with me, if you'll permit me.
Yes.
I will welcome the parties, and I will introduce myself as the mediator for that session. And I will state as follows: as mediator, my role is not to judge or make decisions, but rather to assist you, the parties, with exploring options for settling your dispute. So, as a trained mediator, you're supposed to use your skills, or skill set as it's called these days, to help the parties to reach a specific focal point and see how best they can compromise with each other, and then go forward and help them to settle the dispute. Whatever is discussed during the mediation session must be held in the strictest of confidence. As a matter of fact, prior to mediation, a confidentiality document is signed by the parties and the lawyers to ensure the authenticity of the mediation process, because what parties will discuss may not have been revealed to the lawyers, if you will, but they have the opportunity to reveal everything that will help them reach an amicable settlement. And that is the beauty of mediation. At the end of it, once we arrive at an agreement, after the process, it is understood that that agreement has the same weight as though a judge issued an order, or as we say, give a decision in the matter. But in this case, it's the parties who will do it for themselves with the assistance of the mediator.
Thank you very much. Father Mike, what would you say is the theological basis of the concept of mediation?
I would quickly say, because it has been on my mind, that reconciliation would be, for me, the central issue here. Reconciliation rather than strict justice. When one seeks mediation, one does not necessarily give up one's justice. If you offend me, I seek to address this through the court, but I could also seek to address it one-on-one. If you are familiar with the text of Matthew 5, which says, if you are taking your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave the offering, go reconcile with your brother, and then come back and make your offering. What mediation does, it gives people an opportunity to settle their disputes, not just amicably, but to bring close again a relationship which became estranged because of some infraction. I remember going to court in Calico. Now, I haven't gone to court a lot in my life, but I went there to assist a young man who had gotten in trouble while I was working in the Mariqua area. And what really was disheartening for me was to see two brothers, standing up against the other over land dispute, and one was telling the court he lost or almost lost his eye on account of the inability of brothers to reconcile. And it was very disheartening for me. But I realized that such a thing was there from Genesis 4 with Cain and Abel, brother against brother. But to get back strictly to what you asked, what happens in reconciliation is that I give up my justice in order to collapse the gap or the distance between my brother and I. So I am saying I am right to be offended, I'm right to seek justice, but I'm giving that up so that we can once more again either be friends or be brothers, or at least treat each other civilly. So it saves a person the distress of the court, the distress of spending time, and the distress of spending a lot of money on a court-centered dispute settler. So I would say at the heart of it, for me, is reconciliation rather than strict justice, because justice means, give me my pound of flesh.
Thank you very much, Father Mike. Mr. Camara, as a court-appointed mediator, how long have you been carrying out those responsibilities? And can you give us some examples of your experiences as a mediator?
I have been doing mediation now for 13 years.
13?
13 years. And during that time I have seen a number of cases, as Father Mike has said, can be disheartening, but during my training period I was told that I'm too clinical, and at some point you have to try your best not to get too immersed into the situation at hand. But I've seen mother and son where a son wanted to basically throw the mother out of the house, and that for me, that shook me a bit. I'm an only child, and I couldn't fathom seeing myself putting my mother out of our home. But mediation, alternative dispute resolution, which is the legal name for it, if you will, is really, it's an attempt to have a win-win situation, and where parties can come together, sit at a table similar to this in the courts, in the court's room, because at this point we're using the judges' chambers for most of the mediation cases, and settle. But it's an attempt to get a win-win situation and try to get the parties to repair a damaged situation or relationship.
What role is played in the process by lawyers?
Very good question. As a mediator, I will ask the lawyers to sit in the back of the mediation room. I know Queen's Counsel has been party to a number of cases before me, but the point is I've asked the lawyers to sit in the back because mediation is about the parties, not the lawyers. But we live in a culture, we're part and parcel of a culture where you want to win, you were trained to win, and you expect your lawyer or lawyers to speak for you still, even at mediation. But no, mediation is about the parties. The parties are being empowered to speak for themselves and to try and arrive at an amicable solution to the problems that brought them first to the court.
And what happens, Mr. Kamara, if in spite of your best efforts, the parties fail to agree on a settlement? What happens after that?
It is sent back to the judge or master in the matter, and then it can go on to trial. Because mediation is about settling, it's about settlement, and that is very important to understand. If mediation fails, then it is sent back to the judge or master, and then a court date can be set for a trial.
And if that happens, and the matter goes on for trial, say before the judge, can either of the parties say to the judge, so and so happened in mediation,
No.
or I was told so and so?
No, absolutely
What are the
not.
rules with regard to that?
To use an American term, the mediator has immunity from being called as a witness before in a matter. He or she will never be called to testify on behalf of either party once the matter goes back to court. So in that case, no, the mediator has immunity from the proceedings.
And can either party tell the judge what happened in
Absolutely
mediation?
not, because you have signed a confidentiality agreement prior to the mediation session, and as such you cannot, the lawyers either cannot bring up whatever was disclosed at mediation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. Father Mike, in your long experience as a priest, have you noticed any difference in the attitude of people towards settling matters nowadays as opposed to years ago?
I would say, without much reflection on it, that the court system is used much more readily now than before. I would say before, sometimes you have a neighbor who is respected, or perhaps then a school teacher, or perhaps somebody in the medical profession. But there was always somebody respected in the community or communities who would be seen as someone whom one could tell or relate one's problems to, and who would be a kind of community mediator. Today, such a person, I would say, is a bit rare. We have, I was saying to myself recently, as I passed near the court, there's so many young people, you know, around the entrances. I wonder, you know, whether or not such persons are getting their cases settled. But I think we need to ponder your question seriously, because a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of human resources are spent on enmity rather than helping our people to build. Because whenever we reconcile, we are building the society to be more tolerant, people to be more tolerant of each other, people to be more sympathetic to each other, people also who are willing to give one another a second chance. You may offend me now, but I don't want to hold this against you forever, especially people who live in the same neighborhoods. But I would say in the past we would have had elders, we would have had certain village or community personalities who were trusted and who were seen as those who could reconcile disputes between contending parties.
Thank you, Father Mike. Mr. Kamara, who decides which person is appointed as a mediator in a particular dispute before the judge?
The parties will have an input, because the roster of mediators will be presented to them in court.
What do you mean by the roster of mediators?
The roster of mediators will be the list of mediators who are trained and appointed to be mediators.
Will these be lawyers?
Well, they can be. They can be a lawyer or two, I think, are on the list of mediators today. So it's not exclusive to lawyers, but a layperson in the community can be trained to be a mediator. And then, of course, the committee that we have now set up in St. Vincent and the Grenadines will determine to put those persons on the roster of mediators.
So if there's a member of the public right now who is interested in becoming a mediator, what does that person do to make that interest manifest?
They can approach Father Mike, if you will. He's on the committee, and he can put his name forward, and then he will have to be trained.
Or her.
Or her. And they will have to be trained first, once we have the training session.
Could you tell us about the training?
The training can be up to 6 weeks. When I was trained, I had to attend like a classroom session for 6 weeks, and after that you were examined, you were given exams, mock trial, mock mediation, if you will, not mock trial, but mock mediation, to see if you can be qualified. You do go through a rigorous course for about 6 weeks.
Do you have to pay for that training?
Upon recollection, I cannot remember if I had to pay. But when you become a mediator, you have to pay for your application to become a.
Is it a big sum from what you recall?
No, it's not. From memory, no, it was not.
And what does it cost the parties to have a matter mediated?
It is, I think it's about $750. I know they pay for
each.
No, it's about $450 each or thereabouts to the office, and then once the matter is put to be mediated, it is then you have to through your lawyers or the parties can approach the court office and pay for the mediation session. It's done prior to mediation, and they receive a receipt saying that they've paid and complied, and then the matter is being put down to go forward to the mediator.
Suppose, thank you very much. Suppose a mediation session takes place, and the parties apparently come to an agreement. But before the matter goes back before the judge, one of those parties changes his or her mind.
Yes.
What does that party do?
It has happened. It must come back to mediation. It will not go back immediately to the judge. But if, for argument's sake, two persons, they reached a settlement, but for some reason they decided not to follow through, if you will, it must come back to mediation. In fact, the judge will send it back to mediation to try and iron out whatever it is. As a matter of fact, in the mediation agreement, standard form, you will see there's a paragraph that says any dispute herein will be resolved, or point thereof will be resolved through mediation.
Thank you. If there is a dispute over property in, say, Bayabo, Georgetown, Chateaubelair, Barley,
Yes.
does the mediator have to go to the spot in order to be able to assist the parties and
It is
arriving at a
best.
settlement?
It is best for the mediator to go to the site, especially if it's a land dispute, a boundary dispute, access dispute, to get access from one point on a property, land, might be agricultural land, or even a home, or access point for home. It is best for the mediator to go to the site to see exactly what is happening, so that using his or her training, he can then, or she can then, help the parties to arrive at a solution. Staying in the mediation room and trying to try to determine what is happening on the ground will not benefit the parties. It's always about the parties, and it's best for the mediator to go to the site to see exactly what is taking place on the ground.
Have you had any experience going underground, of having neighbors, when they behold the mediator and the parties, try to give you advice as to who is right and who is wrong?
No, I've never had that experience. The parties will be present, the lawyers will be present, but then at the end of the day, I will only allow the parties to point out what was the contentious point or points that asked them to go to court in the first place. And so I will walk around the compound or the parameters of the property to ascertain exactly what is going on from their perspective, and then try to help them reach a midpoint as to see how best they can go forward in the future.
You mentioned that it is best in some disputes, particularly land disputes, for the mediator to go to the site. If a mediator has to visit a site in Chateaubelair, bearing in mind that the parties would have paid less than $1,000 for that service, who pays the expense of the mediator in going to distant places? And I haven't even mentioned the Grenadines yet.
Which I have attended a site to see in the Grenadines, to see how things go in there. But on the mainland, I have attended at my own expense. At the end of the day, the mediator is getting about $650 for each matter. It is not about the money. It's more civic responsibility when you become a mediator. It's never about the money. It is never about the money. And it's not about the mediator, it's about helping. You have to have a real, inner fire, if you will, in helping others to arrive at an amicable solution to their issues or problems. So it's not about the money, because you're not going to be a millionaire from becoming a mediator. It's more about your civic responsibility in the community to help parties, disputing parties, come to an amicable solution to their issues that brought them to court in the first place.
Thank you very much. Father Mike, what advice or encouragement would you give to someone who contemplates becoming a mediator in terms of the sacrificial service aspect of mediation?
Well, you said it already. It's a sacrifice, but it's a worthwhile sacrifice, because it puts oneself at the service of persons who are in need of help, namely the resolution of their conflicts, their difficulties. And I want to insert here something I missed when I spoke last. Ministers of religion whether it be male or female, are still the reference points for many in terms of mediation. So someone may go to their pastor, someone may go to their priest, but that was something of the past. It is still something around. But to go back to what you asked, I think it's a worthwhile service. The benefits are not monetary. It's not about the money, and Mr. Kamara said that. It's about helping to resolve the tensions which can, if allowed to, become like cancer and eat away at the relationships that are necessary to build our civilization. It would indeed entail sacrifice. Sometimes that may take one off one's regular schedules, but in the end, it is better to have a city that is reconciled rather than a city at war with its members.
Thank you very much. Because the reason what prompted that question, Mr. Kamara, I had occasion to have represented somebody who had a matter in dispute in Barley. And I recall us going to Barley, myself, the other lawyer, the parties, and you. And I reflected on the time it would have taken you to go there, and you were so very patient, and that was a successful mediation because the parties managed to resolve their difficulties. But I reflected on the serious responsibility that falls on the shoulders of mediator. And at this point, on behalf of all persons who have availed themselves of the mediation service, let me say thank you to you and all the other mediators on the roster for answering the call of national service. But get back to mediation proper itself. So let us see the parties come before you, discussions ensue, their various issues put forward. I just want you to give us some detail. How do you deal with them in the mediation room? What is the procedure by which you encourage them to come to a settlement?
At first, you will, in the mediation room, you will have the parties have an open discussion with the attorneys present. Again, the attorney is not fully active in the discussion. Then, if need be, I will have a one-on-one caucus session, if you will.
Could you explain that?
Okay. If I see the need for any of the parties, because I must do it on a balance, I must do it with the disputing parties individually. I cannot do it with one and not the other. Mm-hmm. That will not go well. You must observe what points, as a trained mediator, that you will observe those points that are contentious, that you will bring out in the open with both of the parties present, and if need be, you will then ask for a caucus session with them individually to further explore points or options to try and draw them closer to a point where they can say, okay, the defendant will say, okay, I am willing to give up this portion of the land, if you will. If it's a land dispute, it can be an accident matter, because I've dealt with a lot of accident cases, but more so with land disputes and so forth. You will have them sit and discuss the issues, and then you can have them go back and forth where we have a negotiate on certain points, explore options to try and arrive at a durable agreement.
Therefore, when you are speaking to one party in a caucus session, mm-hmm. what does the other party do? Does the other party remain in the room to hear what's going on?
No. They're excused and they will sit outside with their attorneys, and thereafter I will do the same thing.
When
with
you
them.
finish with the one, you call the other one.
Exactly. And then we will go over the points based on their perspective to see how best we can reach an amicable solution.
And if necessary, you call them back together.
Together again. And if need be, that is where I will ask the attorneys to have a discussion with their clients to try and see if we can bridge a gap. If the gap is so contentious, I can ask the attorneys to come in, because at the end of the day, it's about settlement, and you do not wish to have a protracted legal battle on your hands, because it can be expensive.
And if agreement is reached between the parties, you sign a document informing the judge what?
You will do an agreement, and it is vetted by the attorneys present then and there, and then the parties will sign along with me, and then it will go back to the judge, and then the judge will read it and sanction it as an order of the court.
So if both parties
If they agree,
tell
yes.
the judge, yes, we have agreed to
Yes.
that, we have signed it,
Yes,
the judge will make it an order of the court.
exactly.
Is an order made by the judge based on a mediation as binding and effective as an order made after a trial?
It has the same weight as the court. It says that. And as part of the process, the agreement reached by the parties will have the same weight as a judge issuing an order or decision. And that is the beauty of mediation. But in this case, in mediation, it is the empowerment of the parties to settle their own dispute.
Father Mike, as a member of the National Mediation Committee, have you discussed the matter with your fellow priests to get an input from them as to how they feel about the whole question of mediation?
Not directly, not in any detail. They know that I represent the Christian Council on the National Mediation Committee, and that, of course, this is Mediation Week, and perhaps I should use the opportunity now to remind our viewers that on Wednesday we have a public lecture at French's House at 7:30 p.m. This will be presented by Mr. Francis Compton, who is the Regional Mediation Coordinator, with the topic "In the Middle of Difficulties Lie Opportunity." And then on Thursday we have a legal aid clinic at the Old Public Library beginning at 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. and you urge to come out and to get help if you so need it. And then on Friday we have a mock mediation session dramatized at the House of Assembly at 2 p.m. Again, we urge you to come out. And perhaps if I may use this opportunity also to say that the National Mediation Committee comprises a member of the Judiciary, Justice Henry, the Registrar of the High Court, and then representatives from the Ministry responsible for Legal Affairs, Attorney General, a member of the Bar Association, the President, Ms. Rene Baptiste, a member of the private sector, Mr. Wayne Hull, President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, myself, and trade unionists, Mr. Burns Bonady and Ms. Felder Gums. But yes, so I have not spoken in any depth, but they know the value of mediation, especially because part of our responsibility as clerics is to mediate between God and man and human beings and human beings. But the point is well taken. I think there is need for a greater appreciation of what a National Mediation Committee is meant to do and what mediation is, of what benefit it is rather to the society. If this is taken on board by all our Christian churches, for example, as part of our ministry of building civil society, then I think we'll be well on the way to doing a service not only to human beings, but in thanksgiving to God for the reconciliation which He gave to us through His Son, Jesus Christ.
Thank you very much, Father Mike. Mr. Kamara, so far we have been discussing mediation as the attempt to resolve a dispute that is before the court. Suppose two neighbors have a dispute and it has not yet reached the court. Is there such a thing as a private mediation?
Yes, I have taken part and have conducted a number of private mediations. You can get the name or names of the mediators from the court, and you will then have to settle with the mediator, and the parties will have to agree as to what fee they're willing to pay to have the matter mediated prior to going to court. And yes, it can be done.
And if an agreement results from such a private mediation, would that agreement have the same weight as an order of court made after a regular court-appointed mediator?
Excellent question. It all depends on the parties. The parties will be the ones who will decide if they're going to adhere to what they themselves agree to. And at the end of the day, if it later goes to court, they can always bring it up that they did settle then with each other. Maybe another party will decide to take it to court. And it's possible. But they are the ones who will decide in the private mediation, if you will, outside of the ambit of the court, what they will do and not do. And if they wish to, they will have to adhere to the agreement that they decided to go with.
Thank you. What has been your general experience about the attitude of lawyers towards mediation? Those lawyers were not members of the mediation panel.
Generally, the lawyers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are very cooperative with the process. You may find one or two who may well think that it is not for them. They do not like the lengthiness of it in terms of sitting in a room for 3 hours. But generally, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the lawyers I've had the pleasure of interacting with during mediation, they have been very, very cooperative with the whole process.
Thank you. Father Mike, as a member of the National Mediation Committee, what is your level of satisfaction in terms of the public acceptance of the concept of mediation?
It's a very good question. I don't know if I can answer it integrally, but I would say as people are educated, so we have to educate our people, use the means available to us, media, social media, etc. I think as people are educated, they would come to appreciate more the value of it. Those who have experienced mediation, I would say, would have come away much better for it than had they, got stuck to the regular court system. But I would like to urge after this week continued publicity regarding mediation and the value of mediation for the building of Vincentian civilization, especially after 40 years of independence.
Finally, can you tell the viewers who is the head of the National Mediation Committee and what role that person has played so far?
Well, we are headed by Justice, Madam Justice Henry, and I find her to be an excellent leader. In fact, I'm always edified by the way she conducts the meetings, and I've never been to court with her, but I imagine that she runs a good court. So I would say we have a leader who is edifying and enthusiastic at the helm, and with her leadership, mediation can only get better here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you very much. Mr. Camaro, we are about to wind up the program. Our extended time is about to expire. Do you have any final thoughts you wish to impart before
Thank you.
I wrap up?
Thank you. I can only say at this juncture that mediation can work. It is working so far. It has been working for 13 years in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it will grow and deepen as we have a committee now. We did not have a committee before, and look where we are now. So I can only say the public must be informed and educated more, and this is the week that we will use to do that, and I look forward to taking part in the sessions, public sessions.
Has the government been approached to make any contribution towards the whole concept of mediation, and if so, with what results?
I think the Attorney General is on board. He too is a trained mediator. He was trained with me when I got my training.
That's the Honorable John De Martin.
Indeed. And I know he will do his best in trying to see if we can get the community centers to be a place where parties can meet with a mediator to help iron out some dispute or the other in the communities. So I'm looking forward to all that.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, that brings us to the end of this session, which I hope you have found educational, enlightening, and enjoyable. On the whole question of mediation, the Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean is very enthusiastic about pushing the idea of mediation throughout the Eastern Caribbean. And here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are playing our role. Those of you who are regular viewers of The Law and You would recall that I have spoken on this topic in 2 recent programs. And from time to time, I will continue to touch on the topic. We are grateful to Monsignor Michael Stewart and Mr. Simon Camara for joining us on this very special edition of The Law and You, the first ever panel I've had. And not that we're trying to take away from Encounter, their format. But let me say good night to the brothers in Encounter. Encounter is a program which the viewers of The Law and You always look at, because they look at Encounter before they look at The Law and You. And then after The Law and You, they go on to look at the wrestling. So until next week, Divi, and let me just give you advance notice that the program on The Law and You next week will be a repeat of last week's program, The Supremacy of God. Many people apparently found that topic intriguing and have asked me to repeat the topic, and it will be repeated next week, Monday, DV. And for 2 people met me in the week and asked me, Mr. Campbell, what does DV mean? Well, it's from a Latin phrase, Deo volenti, meaning if it be the will of God. DV. So, see you next Monday, DV, for another presentation in this public service nation building series, The Law and You. Do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC, and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.